Yeah,
That's fine, and then John can access it through his,
Okay, I think it's recording.
no.
It says recording. Okay, I will
okay.
trust that.
All right.
All right.
All right. I love you guys. Y'all have a good day. Be good.
Come-
And you too, Tim. Try really
Come
hard.
back if you can.
Okay, I will.
Okay. So today I wanted to talk about the family side of APGs and how to engage them when they're new. So that joke that John just told that we didn't get on video, and I'm not going to repeat it because I can't remember it, is relevant because the families all face a lot of issues when they first come in, and one of them is recognizing their kids' attempts at manipulation, and that's what that was about. Yeah, a lot of times they come in here and the families are just really engaged in a whole lot of unhealthy codependency, and they don't recognize it. They don't know what's happening. They need a place to vent. So what I've done, and I shared this in the email, is created kind of a framework around these new family education meetings that we have. We call them pillars. It's something that Charlie came up with. I know John, and from way back in PDAP, they called it Climbers Group. Just something for them to feel like, hey, we're part of this group. They start getting used to the fact that they're part of it also, and it's not just for their kids. So when they show up every week, the very first week, what I do is allow them to vent, and then further explain, even after they've been through orientation with me, they still need to understand the structure of the APG, how it's different than going to IOP or even the family sessions at treatment. It's a little different because it's a long time that they can be involved. And the constant level of many interventions that we do in an APG, some of them need to understand that further. So we kind of go over all of that the first meeting. And while they're talking, I'm getting to know them. It's usually a smaller group of people. And I'm getting to know what are their issues, what's going on with them right now, their family structure. Are the kids, trying to get away with things? Are they on board with the APG? Most of the time they're not when they walk through the door. So the families have a hard time getting them to the door. And so I get the families in first sometimes, and then we talk about a strategy to get the kids in. So that's week one. The rest of this is very loosely, it looks like it's structured week to week, but I pull from these different materials based on what the family needs. For instance, this last week, we had a very small group, and every one of them identified because their kids are in very long-term treatment and haven't come into the APG yet. And so we were talking about, how does that look when they get here? What can you expect? And the week that we were on was not relevant. And so I just pulled some materials and we talked about it so that we're getting the families committed, even if the kids aren't. So that is the whole purpose of the family education piece in the very beginning. And it doesn't stop there. You're doing this every week in their support group. What I wanted to ask is, especially for you, Heidi, and Janessa, I'm not sure about your background. Are you working with an APG?
No, well, kind of. I've been helping, I guess, facilitate all of our, to like make our tools, like the Fidelity tool and like the after action review that the coaches and the facilitators will be using when they actually do their APG groups.
And you're in New Hampshire too?
Yeah, I'm in New Hampshire.
Okay. I heard you use the word fidelity, and I know that's a word Heidi's used. So yeah.
It's funny to say that because when I first started my internship, Heidi would say fidelity, and I thought like your retirement. I was like, what is she talking about? And then I Googled it and I was like, oh, fidelity. Oh, it has nothing to do with retirement.
Well,
So Robin Janessa is an MSW intern at the University of New Hampshire and is working with me this year. And so, we are not an APG, we at the University of New Hampshire Institute on Disability, we focus on, particularly my team focuses on children's behavioral health. And so we are working with partners around the state to really develop a continuum of supports around substance use for youth with substance use and co-occurring disorders. And so under the Creating Connections New Hampshire project, we've developed a youth peer support model that we're promoting called the New Hampshire APG, that we have been developing tools and resources and offer coaching and assistance to organizations willing to pilot the APGs. Does that answer
Okay.
the question?
So when you create an APG, and I've heard you talk earlier that you might have the ability to start 2 new ones, which is wonderful. Do you have a plan to involve families and have family program?
So that is our goal. If you look at our the practice profile where we've defined the critical elements of the alternative peer group, family engagement is a key piece. Given the grant funding that we have available right now, there's a very small amount of funding available for APGs to pilot. And we have heard from them that they don't feel confident that they can start up the APG and the family support simultaneously. So we've kind of scaled back our expectations and we're asking them to commit to facilitating at least one activity or group a week with the youth, and then developing resources for families to connect in with family support, maybe another organization that can provide that family support and resources.
Okay. I might have a resource for you. We should talk later.
Yeah, and we, some of our organizations have positive connections already with NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, and there are often families who have some lived experience with substance use disorders. And so, we rely on them a lot for support. And then there's a few other organizations. So PFLAG is another resource for our youth and families who are lesbian, gay, transgendered, or questioning.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I know NAMI's got they have a lot of different support groups, so it's helpful. Okay, so when you're ready for that, I hope that this resource I provided will help you at least get an understanding of what you can do with your family members in the beginning. And I'm sure Tim is your guy going to be on today. Bill, right? Yeah.
No, I'm here in his stead.
Okay. I know he would have a lot of opinions about this because you guys do a lot of this with your families, right?
Well, and that's the piece that he and I are formalizing, if you will, so that it can be looked at, so that our approach, and what I would add at this point, the biggest switch that's been productive in getting family members involved is the inclusion part, not a support like a separate program. From our view, as we start, it is part of the client and the family recovery. That's what we do. It's not the client comes, the family comes, and it's separate. No, it is truly, and our conversation this morning basically said, okay, well, why do we have like a separate price list? Or this is family care, this is client care. And really our decision goes to even to that point. So that, no, this is the program. Now, if you live in Dallas versus Houston and parents are in Dallas, one of the benefits of like COVID and the things we've experienced, it's not a stretch to give them to close that door for an out, to say, great, well, we have Zoom. And so this is what it looks like. It's not an excuse to leave or not to participate or not to have at least a minimum understanding, because our philosophy from the beginning is that those relationships under the best of circumstances has changed. Mom is no longer mom, dad is no longer dad, spouse is no longer spouse. Okay, they are also almost a quasi counselor. They are a parole officer. And they've had to learn some of these things over the years or times that have to be really undone as part of the recovery. As part of the clients alongside the person in active addiction, that relationship has changed. And so
Oh, yeah.
to change it back, okay, they hear me say, okay, your job is to be mom now. Okay, you're not the parole officer, you're not and so your part in this is to learn how to be mom. And so
It's funny you would mention that, Tim. One of the topics that I chose to work with these families on is the family roles in a dysfunctional home. And I just introduced that this last week, and it really opened up some eyes into how affected they are, how everybody slips into their own little role to help stabilize this dysfunction and how to manage it, and how it's inevitable that when one person changes, everybody changes. So usually, that's the family member saying, okay, kid, you don't have a choice now. I'm going to draw up some boundaries, and now everything's going to be different. And it's uncomfortable, and they don't like the feelings around it. So this gives them the chance to process that a little bit in a support group with peers. I'm not a licensed therapist. And so they feel a little safer with me in that room. And I push therapy, and I push go get a sponsor, go to Al-Anon. And actually in our group right now, a lot of them are exploring that. They're going to Al-Anon together, which is unheard of in the beginning. So it's working, but that is so important. And
in our model,
you guys are a little different because you're working with adults, and I'm also working with the Lifeway Adult APG, and they're completely different dynamics. They have to have the basic understanding of these concepts, or they keep spinning their wheels. So that's why I think it's important to have this at the very beginning with new families.
Well, and to what you are laying out here, and hopefully I'm not treading over something, but just if you look at the mechanics of what the interview process looks like here, when someone's coming to view the house, or considering becoming a client, checking in, anytime that the parent or the spouse, in this case, as long as they're both present, there's been purposefully a dynamic shift it addresses the other half of our program. This is what you should see. This is like their first meeting, not the client. And it's 100% until that first hour when they leave, or now they've got the car unpacked and the person's moving in. Okay, it's a co-meeting, but guess what? My conversation, the actual pitch or whatever introduction or however you want. Okay, this is the days that we have the family. This is what we do. This is the rooms. This is what you can expect. And this is what your portion is. And your portion, that first hour, they thought they were here to drop someone off. Okay. And so I've really made that change in my mind's eye, that I've set the expectation that they didn't know what they were walking into. But now this is what your role is going to become. You're going to welcome mom. You're going to now become mom. Okay. With the recommendations and things. Okay. Our job is, okay, you're going to be mom. You're going to be dad. And this is the support features that we have built in. Now, this is one of the rare times you're going to get to see me, because I'm going to be working with your daughter. or I'm going to be working with your son. So really, we need to have between us, dialogues that mom shouldn't be in. That's not your job anymore. Okay.
Right.
So we're going to have this conversation. But mom, this is what, and here's Bill's number. Here's his contact information. The Zoom will work. Okay. Saturday morning at 10:30, Zoom, midweek Zoom, or if that doesn't work, and then Sunday, person to person, because that's your visitation time. We're going to put a spread out. You're going to have like an hour visit, catch up on things, meet everybody else here at the house. Oh, so I've got a role in this. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, we're working on our part. You need to be in a place where the kind of things that we're going to take and work on. Let's set up some real goals here. This Christmas, it's not going to be, oh my God, what are they going to act like and where are we going to be when we get together? That anxiety, that's that tension. That's the kind of things that it's going to be fun when we work all together. And that's about the pitch. You just heard it. So.
That's perfect. Yeah. And just for them to understand, this is a long-term deal that we get to walk with them side by side. We're not here to fix them. We're here to help them to fix it themselves and to learn what that really looks like. So yeah, I think that's really, really critical, very important. And I really hope that you guys in New Hampshire can find the funding to fund a family program, because without that, it's hard, because a true APG addresses all of those issues together, and it's intended to help each individual of the family to continue to grow individually. Yeah. Because otherwise they continue in this negative spiral of, the loop that they get into of blaming each other and just expecting the addict to change and everything will change. And that's not true.
No, but it's a beautiful thing. That same, now that I've adopted that more almost aggressive, if you will, stance, it sets up Bill. Okay, it sets up Bill to where Bill can be the facilitator. Bill can focus on, and when they're coming, they're almost prepped for when he gets that phone call. Of course, I call him and say, okay, it's a female, mom's about here, they're out of town, in town. And it puts him in a much more effective dynamic when he's starting that introduction, if you will, because it's seamless. He picks up and he says, you're going to be learning from your point of view, which is a mom's point of view, the same program that we have that they're involved in. And the way also that I describe that is over time, that relationship, with the presence of the addiction and the need for recovery is that the added fatigue of emotional fatigue, financial fatigue. Okay. And an otherwise caring and loving relationship creates resentment. Now, through this learning about how heavy that load is and seeing what DBT, what the other person's perspective is, instead of resentment, it's another R word. It's a respect for the progress and the continuum of care. And it just opens itself up to measuring that. I had a meeting yesterday with someone that 2.5 years ago, I was working with him, and Bill and I both, matter of fact, were working 2.5 years ago with this family. And the son is now 2.5 years sober. And so great. On the 18 months to 4-year scale, this is where he is. He's now a counselor at a local facility. He got elevated from a house manager to, and I said, well, and these kind of decisions are being made. And I said, great growth. And it's right on what we're looking for in the APG that he's at. And he says, I didn't realize, he says, I keep waiting for it to be done. But now that you explained to me he's 2.5 years, my expectation was still 4 years where these things that I'm waiting on. So I'm wondering if he's going to fall all the way back. No. Support him where he's at. realistically with the education. And he says, this is the best hour and a half. He says, we're doing it. It's working. And so now again, instead of that creeping in, that fear creeping back in, that although he's not perfect, he's maturing much rapidly and doing, he says, just to have that knowledge, he says, I was not expecting this. Laura and I were not expecting that. We still may have, I'm glad we had the meeting, because now we're back on track with what our expectation, and can enjoy and respect the work that he's put in for the last 2.5 years. And so I'll stop with that.
Well, I think that's important. We teach them to trust the process, and there's going to be times when you have a relationship with the families that they might walk out of the room. They might not like what you're saying. So you have to really learn to take care of yourself and know that what you're doing is setting them up for success down the road. And it's a process. Sometimes they just resist it themselves, and it can be rather frustrating. So for me, what you're talking about earlier was what we call a strategy appointment. That very first appointment that you have with them, like when they drop off their kid and you explain the process, and then comes this family education series. Like, all right, our expectation of you as a family member is the first 4 to 6 weeks, you're on the Zoom meeting every week, and it's going to be fun. Don't worry about it, And then they come and you talk about this stuff, and it helps to set them up for the long haul, and ease them into what can they be doing, because a lot of times they're looking for something they can do. How can they fix this? And what you teach them is slowly, there's nothing for you to do other than take care of yourself and draw up some boundaries, but it takes 4 to 6 weeks for them to get that, and to hear it in different ways. So I like to see things. I have a binder. I like things organized. I love a structure, but I know that you can't follow that guideline all the time. You have to meet them where they're at. So I hope that some of these materials help. I also think it's important to pull from, Zoom is very helpful. So I really have a love-hate relationship with it, but I'm working with families in Houston every week. I've never met these people in person, but they trust me, they respect me, they're hearing the same messages. And you pull from different materials, whether it's printed or you find a PowerPoint or something to keep them engaged. And so I've tried to do that. I'm finding a lack of good PowerPoints, so I may have to create one myself. But there's a video that I found for the parents to watch about the family roles in addiction. That was very helpful. So they're not just hearing it from me, because I'm not the expert, the expert. So I want them to hear from many different people the same messages, that it finally clicks, So add to it. I hope that you might find some of it helpful. I don't know if you had a chance, Tim, or anyone, to look at some of the materials that John emailed you guys, but you may want to have Bill look at it too, because I'm sure he's seen a lot of this. One of the critical pieces is the part about the brain, the addiction as a disease and how it affects the neurology. Because if they don't get that, they won't understand all this other stuff. They will continue to blame their family members, and it's just not healthy. So they have to understand how it affects the brain. And you didn't. Okay. I thought that he emailed it out to the group, but I'll have him do it again.
Yeah, I'm looking for it, and I didn't want to be stupid.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Right. I have not received any material.
Got it. I received it.
Interesting. Okay. So
Janessa,
I'll have him
forward it
send
to
it
me?
back out.
Yeah, I can forward it to you. It was in the email. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay. But Tim, I can send it out to you. Yeah, so I'm referencing this thing that some of you don't have, sorry. Anyway,
I was gonna ask you, like, what are you keep referencing the pillars, and I was trying to write them down. So I was gonna ask you if you could share, like, what are the pillars? So I'm assuming that that's in these resources that you thought were emailed out.
no, that's a really good thought. What we named our group pillars, but you just got me thinking that I should probably create a set of pillars for our group called pillars. I like
Right.
that idea. Because yeah, that would help me structure that's an awesome idea. Thank you. That's what I love about this group.
So
Yeah, and we call it that because it's like the foundation that holds up their own recovery as a family member,
Right, yeah. We've been trying to develop a facilitator fidelity tool that is aligned with SAMHSA's recovery competencies. And so the way that we have been thinking about organizing supports for facilitators, and I assume, once we get to, organizing supports for families, we would try to do the same thing, is to really kind of align with those recovery competencies. And so we've kind of boiled them down to 5 different areas, because if you just look at the SAMHSA's recovery competencies, it's a little bit overwhelming. They're very large, and so we have focused on recovery, person-centered, so kind of person-centered, staying person-centered, utilizing person-centered tools, and then focus on relationships, so communication, conflict management, skills around that, trauma-informed care resources, and then ethical responsibility.
That sounds great. You mentioned person-centered tools, and that is one of the things that I address later on, like toward the end of the 6 week. It's 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what they need. But toward the end of their time with me, I like to center around the 8 dimensions of wellness, and we do a life assessment for each family member so that they can assess what they need to be working on, and start detaching from their loved ones program and create their own. And so we get really, I can't wait to do that, to focus on their own dreams and their own goals, yeah, and also one of the main goals is for them to identify one enabling behavior, at least one that they're doing, and to commit on changing that. And that's fun. Yeah, so
That's in the information you're sending out, because that's really, yeah, that's in my notes, some of the things I was going to ask.
Yeah, it's all in there, like all of the materials that I pull from, and then the outline as well. So, okay, sorry, I'm just looking at a message. Yeah, and what that ends up doing is after the 4 to 6 weeks, they leave with a sense of enthusiasm about pursuing their own recovery. They understand that they have to be in it, and then they know the tools they can pull from. They know that they have us to lean on, and that and this is part of their graduation requirements, is that the families come to this. So that's how I hook them in. We don't tell them, hey, this is mandatory, you must come. But if they want to feel like they're part of this recovery thing, they come. In the past, when Lifeway was really big, there were times that we didn't do the climbers group right away. And so we would have people coming who had been, we could identify them as being very unhealthy and say, hey, I think you should go to this group. And that's another thing too, is that this is ongoing. it's important to be able to bring people in at different levels. So if you have new people coming in and you have someone who's been there for 3 weeks, they can actually help each other. The ones that are starting to understand it, and that helps them learn how they operate in their recovery meetings, when their weekly support meetings, where we're helping them learn how to support each other. So it's baby steps. And I also like to include some kind of reading where they're taking turns reading in the group, because some of these people have never done that. They come in, I know when I first entered recovery with my kid, I would turn beet red in a group. I wouldn't want to read. I was a nervous wreck. I was very insecure. And so having the chance to just have a paper shoved in front of me and say, can you read this paragraph? It helped me, the little baby steps like that really helped me. So, so that's what I try to do, is to start engaging them in their own recovery in different ways. I hope that this helps. Are there anything that any questions you guys have, Heidi or Janessa, about as you're creating your programs? Yeah, I wish someone was here from the APG there.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's one of the things I think that we've seen on these calls, right, is that once folks kind of get into the weeds of facilitating the APGs, that we have seen folks kind of fall off, right? Because they're, strapped for time, which is really unfortunate. So we're trying to set ourselves up really, to provide a lot of that TA to folks. So, I meet with each of the APGs weekly. So I'll definitely share those resources right at, this afternoon, not right after this, but 2:00 today, I'm meeting with one of our APGs. So, I'll share those resources, Robin. So thank you. I think that, we've got pretty good family engagement, with Live Free Recovery. We're struggling to even get referrals, for our other APG right now. But across all of the organizations who have expressed interest in piloting the APGs in New Hampshire, there's a lot of fear and concern around working with families. Most of the organizations we're working with, have lived experience in recovery or have lived experience, providing kind of youth peer support, and don't have expertise in providing that family support. And further, where they are young people, usually, that they're not parents themselves, and they have concerns about that. And what I've said is that, what we want to do is we want to simultaneously, engage. So not necessarily have the same folks facilitating the APG youth group, but a designated parent, ideally with lived experience with, with the child in recovery, who's going to take the lead, and you're fostering those leadership skills, with the parent group simultaneously, and then giving opportunities for youth and families to come together at least once a month, to rebuild relationships, repair, laugh together, have fun, and make those connections with other families, so that we're really building the recovery capital of the entire family unit, right? So recovery is not just about the youth with the substance use disorder, but as you said, all those other family roles that are equally important. So,
I heard you saying there's something important, that this is something we did with Lifeway. So when I worked for Lifeway, I was running 5 different groups around Houston. So what I did is went in and trained a parent coordinator, one of the parents who had some experience in recovery themselves, to manage the group and to help facilitate it themselves. It's totally doable. So you're right, though, when you're brand new, it's very difficult for the facilitator to be the one to train them, because if they're not parents and they're young people, they're not going to be, they're not going to understand. And the parents sometimes are sicker than the kids are in the group, and really need some mentorship,
Right, yeah, and I think that, our APG facilitators are recognizing too, that they don't have that credibility, not being parents themselves and so forth. And so just having the time and investment, to really build that capacity is critical. And I know I've said this before, but I think it's equally important to invest in putting our money where our mouth is and ensuring that, we're paying APG facilitators and we should be paying family support providers as well. This is not easy work. And regardless of whether, Robin, I know you said you're not a therapist, regardless of whether you're like a trained therapist or not, this is an important resource along the substance use continuum. It's something that families are communicating is needed and it's highly valuable. And if we're going to really grow family support, then we need to find financial resources and not expect parents who are juggling kids with their own crises to step up and volunteer their time.
Yeah, you're right. And I do think that you need somebody in your organization to be the point person for that. You need it doesn't have to be a therapist. I actually recommend it not be a therapist who's in that role, because they can be a peer provider, just like your facilitators are. But there is training out there for families, for family recovery coaching. And I had that training. It was kind of like everything that I had been taught at Lifeway, but I wanted something more to make me more credible, And then the intervention training also, you get some understanding about how to help families through that training. Yeah, and I think that I wish that, ideally we would have a therapist on staff that could help with the family therapy needs, because there's definitely a need for that. However, we coordinate with people in the community who provide that, and we walk with them hand in hand throughout the 1.5 to 4 years that they need the peer support. And you're right, it is viable. Like there needs to be some funding coming down the pipeline for family support. I know that it's in the works. It's slow. And then how do you get it down to this level, the grassroots level? That's a irritating point for me. So.
Right. So question for Robin or other group members. In terms of family training, and I know, Robin, you have said that you are, or may have limited capacity to provide some consultation. Are there family leadership or family recovery coaching programs that you would recommend? If you look, there's like 100, right? So like, what are the reputable ones? Do folks have any experience with particular programs that you would recommend?
Like I said, I did go through a little formal training for, I have a certificate from an online course that all the material that they provided was things that I learned at Lifeway. So if you have someone who's new to this, it could be helpful. It's like a shortcut. I can provide you that information later. I just don't want to blast it out there on a recorded video because I have some concerns about it. It was very expensive, but it does provide some kind of certificate. The other thing, I think there's the Arise program is one that I've heard is pretty good for intervention work anyway. Yeah, there's limited where it's just centered around family recovery coaching. I've only known of one place, and that's the one I can share with you offline.
Thank you.
How about you, Tim? Do you know anywhere?
I really don't. I think John, when he introduced me to this group, I'm the least academic of anyone here. That's my qualifier. I come from a clean white sheet, knowing that there was something better to be had. And just through judgment, met a few people like yourself, like John. I did get recovery coach training. I'm an avid reader, studier. The way my brain works, and it's worked, is a business brain. But using the business brain to attack something that is obviously different. I'm retired, right? But using that training and that approach is how I came up with, and it's just amazing to hear. That's why I listen to y'all, because y'all have studied this far more extensively than I have. And what I bring and what Bill brings a lot to is just two people, very hard-headed, 7 years into it, saying, only do the best thing, the right thing for what we see, keep an open mind and strive for that. Found the National Association of Recovery Residences, found HAR, which is a local group of other people that are open-minded, and local organizations. Then in those, find the people that were recovery oriented. And I've had John and a few other people that gave great support and encouragement whenever I was needing it, and individual counselors, and found the gold nuggets where they were, and then aligned those with always the purpose in mind of creating the, I'm not willing to accept 25% recovery rate. I'm not willing to
Right.
accept destroyed families. I'm not, because I didn't have that. Okay, I was able to survive, and it took me, I went the wrong way. I've been sober for 41 years. 25 of those years was absolute misery. I was very successful in business and in life, by however you would measure that, but I was still a very broken person. And then 15 years ago, or so, I had to find a way, because it was attacking a family member. And
Exactly. So
I had to
I heard you
find a
say
way.
something, we have to go soon,
Okay.
but I heard you say something, Tim, that was important. You can find gold nuggets here and there, but I agree there needs to be a place to send people as we create these APGs where they can get some continuity in their training and then replicate it in their programs. And I think I may talk to John about how we can provide that through the AAPG, because there's such a need for family recovery coaching. It needs to happen in order to really have a strong APG.
I think you're going to find that welcome, because that's the conversation that John and I are having, that as we go through what it may look like just marketing, how to fill beds and exactly what you're doing. Okay. That part of that unfolding, if you will, about the organic marketing thing that's going to make this work, where people, there's a place to go to learn what the nomenclature, my notes from today is just the nomenclature, the standardization. A lot of the 2004, 2006 writings, they were trying to invent a new language. And I hear, so that clinicians and instructors could start redefining what recovery looked like to make it a better thing. And I think that's where we're headed. And I think the conversation and the verbiage that I've come up with about my approach for families, because I know how broken it is. Having been, yes, an alcoholic, a drug addict, having been someone in recovery, and then the healing that came to me and my family, that was the biggest gift I got from true recovery, is the repairing of with my family, with my mom, my dad. And then then as a father, to experience it again. It's multifaceted, the blessings that I've received and what that looks like. I have that personal experiences, and just being honest with myself and true with myself, what my role was in that and what it had to become for each one of those. And when I see
well,
those,
it's definitely very powerful when you enter recovery as a family member. It has ripple effects, and I know we all see that. This was a very productive meeting for me. Helped me get some help me get the wheels turning about what we can do with this. And I like your idea of creating some kind of standardization for training other programs how to create a family program.
I think that should be the halo. I
Let's-
truly, that's going to be the halo, because that's what's going to bust this open. That's going to create, you can spend a lot of money trying to create national awareness and to push it. And I think Larissa and I, when we've had our conversations, no, if we do this correctly, there will be, once we have the new awareness, the new structure, if you will, there, we won't have to point people. There will be a herding. There's a thirst out there for this in the parents' faces and eyes, and the same thing with all of you folks, everyone that's putting in so much time, effort, looking for all those things. If we do this right, we will hear the sigh of relief for
Yes.
every component of this, and it will automatically and organically elevate recovery.
Well, and the other part is, this is the scary part. Having fun and providing support for the kids in an APG. Some of those things have been done, like in other groups, like the Boys and Girls Club, you know. But once you talk about getting in there with the families, everybody gets scared to death, and rightfully so. It's difficult to get in and really affect change, but it's possible. It's
It is.
totally possible,
And
and
I
it's
found-
rewarding.
I found your link, by the way. And
Okay.
I had to just keep digging down. The way that it came to me was, it was something that went to you, or went from John to you, from you back to John saying yes, and then John saying great and doing the attachment. And so it was like hidden in the chain. So it wasn't
Okay.
in the, okay, here's who's going to be conducting, and here it is, and it says there's an attachment. But
I will have John send out an email just with that.
And so it was
with
hidden
the
down in
attachment.
there. Yeah, it was hidden
Okay.
down in there, and I finally found it. Great stuff, by the way. I just read 26 pages of it.
I will look forward to talking to you about that later. Well, guys, everybody, we got to go wrap it up. And I'm so glad. I love this group. I love coming on here every week and seeing everybody. Let's make it grow. This is a movement, you know, and we'll all do our part to make that happen.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.